Thanks for tuning in to another installment of Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast that analyzes shows and celebrates women of television. Thousands of comedies, variety shows, and dramas have aired, yet the presence of strong women, both in front of and behind the camera, is often a story untold. Well, Advanced TV Herstory begs to differ. There's so much more, and it's worth telling and retelling. Sometimes shows offer great leadership lessons, or are so timeless in their writing that people say the series has aged well. We'll explore those shows further. We'll revisit moments in TV where women broke records, exceeded expectations, or put their careers on the line. Advanced TV Herstory will connect the treasures of the past to the great potential of today's TV and online platforms, and how it all plays a part in being a woman in America today. Tomorrow's success is rooted in understanding what has come before us. So gear up for a little storytelling and fun, sociology, fashion, economics, or strategy. It's all here in Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Friendly listeners, the tale I'm about to tell is one that requires great discipline on my part to tell, because it requires focus. It's about an episode from Designing Women, a series that I loved when it aired from 1986 to 1993, and still do when I have the chance to watch. Sometimes a single episode within a series, particularly one as progressive and well-written as Designing Women, changes the American dialogue. You're maybe nodding in agreement that for that series, there were many segments that did just that. Hence my discipline. On December 11th, 1989, the fourth season of Designing Women aired the episode that finally spoke to actress Delta Burke's increasing weight gain. It's entitled, "They Shoot Fat Women, Don't They?" and came about after months and months of tabloid fodder. Yes, the tabloids covered Burke's weight, her marriage to TV star Gerald McCraney, all of her quirks, and all sorts of rumors about Burke being difficult on the set. Again, we're using discipline here. We're not going to rehash that multifaceted story. We're sticking to the importance of this one episode. Delta Burke was cast as Suzanne Sugarbaker, a role which most everyone agrees was written for her, following a similar role she had done in a short-lived series with Dixie Carter called Filthy Rich. I am pretty sure I not only watched both episodes, but penciled it in my little pocket Hallmark calendar weeks in advance of its airing. Behind the pageant queen profile of Delta Burke is a trained actress. She studied acting in London and appeared in guest roles on a host of TV series in the 1970s and early 80s. She was almost regular on Love Boat. And in a sense, Suzanne Sugarbaker wasn't that far removed from Delta Burke. Maybe that singular fact made the weight gain all the harder to confront and put into its appropriate context. We are more than the bodies and faces we were born with. If you've been wondering what all the other tabloid kerfuffle was about, I encourage you to read Delta Burke's autobiography entitled Delta Style, published in 1998. But do so knowing that the book was written about 7 years after she left the show and attempted comebacks on TV via the series Delta and Women of the House. And do so knowing that in Googling her now, you'll learn that she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and has achieved a healthy weight. So from the book, we learn that life on the pageant circuit wasn't all bouquets and sashes. She struggled to manage her weight and curves even then. As she wrote in her book, quote, "Even when I was a size 6, I'd hear complaints that my hips were too curvy or my legs too big. And I bought into the whole thing. I'd get up to 123 or 133 pounds and think, I'm such a cow. And I look back now and I say, my God, I was a beautiful, curvy woman, and I was never even aware of it." In the first few seasons of Designing Women, her weight gain was gradual. It was also in those seasons that she met, fell in love with, and married Gerald McCraney, an actor she had met when he did a guest role on a Designing Women episode as one of Suzanne's ex-husbands. McCraney is a soft-spoken man who stood beside Delta through it all. In this Barbara Walters interview from 1990, he never wavers.
All right, as an actor, not as a producer, what I've discovered is that if a man is very demanding and very exacting, then he's a thorough professional. If a woman does the same thing, she's a bitch.
How did you feel when Delta began to put on weight? Did it bother you? Did you feel that she should try to diet?
No, not particularly. I've never been one who cared that much about somebody's exterior. I mean, granted, she's a gorgeous woman, but I've always said about her that she has that kind of beauty that starts inside and works its way out, and that's the important part anyhow.
Delta has said that she feels that you would love her no matter what.
Yeah. But that's, it. You know, she keeps thinking that's unusual, and I don't think it is.
Delta and Mac are both...
Delta Burke had dieted throughout her time on the show, particularly between seasons 1 and 2. In her book, she lists some of those diets by name, and she wrote that at the end of the first season, when she had heard rumors that network executives had given her an ultimatum to lose weight or lose the part, she went to great lengths to limit her food intake. There's no mention of nutritionists or trainers or outside help for her, if that's what you're wondering. Here's how Burke described her self-consciousness on the set from day one of Designing Women. Quote, "The weight problem was something I couldn't ignore even if I wanted to. The issue was forced on me. When I was doing the Designing Women pilot, the image that sticks in my mind is me out there in the middle of the stage, with everybody looking at me, moving around me, and judging how I looked in outfits. How, they asked, holding up their hands, can we cover up those big old thighs? Talking about me like I was a piece of meat who couldn't hear what they were saying." End quote. Now, that's not to say that the series, which was a runaway hit, didn't raise Delta's awareness of how others were seeing her. She also wrote, "At the same time, I remember going on a personal appearance tour and hearing some comments that struck me as odd. Large-size women were coming up to me and saying, 'Your success means a lot to us, and we finally have someone we can relate to.' That kind of threw me. I didn't think of myself that way, at least not yet." End quote. Something happened heading into the fourth season that finally gave Delta the strength and security to address the issue. In an interview found on YouTube, posted by an account called USA Heartbeat, creator, writer, producer Linda Bloodworth-Thomason is pretty blunt in describing how the exposure and headlines over many months brought Delta Burke's weight to the public eye.
I had actually wanted to do a script for a long time about overweight, but I didn't feel Delta was ready to deal with it. And so I didn't mention it to her until the tabloid publicity just became so overwhelming.
Co-producer Linda Bloodworth-Thomason wrote a script that addressed both world hunger and America's obsession with fat. Delta agreed to throw her weight around in an episode that became her revenge.
The show involves Delta going to her high school reunion and going there believing that she's beautiful and finding out instead that she's fat. And what happens at the end is that she gets the award for the most changed, and they gave it to her because she's overweight. No, there were a few tears. She cried, and some people, cast and crew, cried because they knew this was a very personal thing for her to do, and it was a very vulnerable thing to do, and I admire her courage in doing it.
Past few months.
Well, Delta was depressed because who wouldn't be depressed? You know, you go through the supermarket checkout stand and you see yourself depicted as this big, fat, undesirable person whose husband has kicked her out. That would certainly depress me.
In her book, Delta made it clear that she wanted the script of this breakthrough episode, entitled They Shoot Fat Women, Don't They?, to project a certain perspective. She wrote, quote, "I said, please let me have the jokes about the weight, rather than be the butt of the jokes. Give me the power." It was a way to take control of the issue. No more, let's pretend it's not there. End quote. About the actual taping, Delta's writing concurred with Bloodworth-Thomason's interview. She wrote, "I hugged Linda and thanked her. I felt empowered. It felt as if my body was freed. Instead of trying to hide and cover up and move as little as possible, I got my physical comedy skills back." Burke added, "In turn, the character of Suzanne became empowered. It wasn't other people making fun of Suzanne. Suzanne made the jokes." Burke left Designing Women in 1991. Loyal fans will recognize the episode that we're about to discuss further, They Shoot Fat Women, Don't They?, as the turning point in how the character interacted with the other three women. Suzanne became even more opinionated. If you listened to the Advanced TV Herstory installment called For Female Theory and Living Single, you'll appreciate the angle I'm about to take here. In that episode, Professor Wendy Burns-Ardolino, who is also an author, shared portions of her book, TV Female Foursomes and Their Fans, with us. The professor has studied the characters and relationships and tropes and themes of 7 sitcoms that all featured 4 women as lead characters. And in that installment, Burns-Ardolino explained that success is rooted in the writing and acting for the 4 characters. If they can be foils, they create the conflict and tension to be interesting. And as foils with strengths that complement each other, they can come together as a team of equals. It's all very fascinating. Designing Women is one of the series the professor studied. So when we spoke recently, we talked a bit about the series and how the 4 characters meld together. For women coming of age in the late 80s and early 90s, this show was a window to what could be.
Those 2 characters work because you have Charlene, who is the naive, and you have Mary Jo, who's the divorcee, who's struggling with raising 2 children on her own. And those characters all work because they have foils for each other on the shows. Because if you just had a twosome of Dixie Carter and Delta Burke, I think the show would have gone off the air. It just wouldn't have lasted. Those characters were in some ways too polarizing. But the other characters ameliorated that, and then the interaction among the foursome, allows that to go forward as like an alternative family. So, yeah, I think that show for me has always been like coming home. I'm like, these women are living my life, right? And at the time the show was on, I was in college, so it wasn't even like it really was my life, but it was my life, right? Because the kind of things that they would say to each other, the judginess in their voices when they would talk about what they were wearing or who they were dating or, what car they were driving, whatever, or how they were treating so-and-so. That was my life growing up. And so I really felt like these women were me and I was them, and what was I going to do and who was I going to be like? And of course, I wanted to be every bit like Julia Sugarbaker. I wanted to tell everybody off, and when they would say, "Oh no, don't get Julia started," I was like, "How does she do that? I just want to get like to where I can get everything I have ever thought, and then just base somebody with it."
Now, I've never met anyone who has ever actually wanted to be as high maintenance as Suzanne. Maybe those are women with whom it never occurred to me to bring up the series. But the professor puts Suzanne's weight into the context of the character's evolution, both as an individual and as 1/4 of the team.
They did something with it. In other words, I think for a long time they were just trying to cover up her weight gain with clothes, right? Floofy, big clothes, big hair, big everything. But then there are other places, even in the show, where they're talking about how big-breasted she is on this cruise, where she and Annie Potts' character are in competition for this Don Juan type guy on the cruise, and Mary Jo comes out with, when the guy tries to kiss her neck or whatever, she's like, "You're with Suzanne. She's the Rolls Royce of women. And I consider it a privilege just to guard her brassiere." And so it's funny, like there's this whole, it is like a tongue-in-cheekness, but it's also like we know she has really big boobs, right? And it's not lost that the reason her boobs are so big is because she's so big. Because the character, the Don Juan character says, "Well, I'm not really into that big hair and excessive femininity," kind of is what he's saying. But that's what she embodied. But so what I talk about in the book is that her power comes from that, is that she is too much. And there is an episode where she goes up against Ursula, who's a nanny that they hire for the day to take care of the kids at the beach when they all go, they go on vacation together. And so she says to Ursula, she says, "The other women can't tell you that you're too much because they're too nice, but I can tell you because I'm too much too."
This gives us something to think about, doesn't it? So back to this episode, which was one of the first in history that addressed the issue of weight in American culture, in our relationships, and how heavy American women were treated as consumers. It's a powerful, reflective message coming from an actress and character who had risen to her stature and presence through her beauty. As mentioned previously, the major plot of the episode is Suzanne's 15th high school class reunion. The minor plot is that Anthony is raising money for famine relief by fasting for 48 hours. Julia and Mary Jo join him. Suzanne initiates the conversation as she enters the Sugar Baker interior design office living room place, which is the primary location of all of their episodes.
And one of y'all give me a hand here?
Suzanne, what on earth have you bought?
Oh, just some dresses I took on approval. I wanted y'all to help me decide, for my class reunion this weekend. Now, you have to keep in mind, Friday night's a meet and greet, so it's casual, and Saturday's dressy.
Oh, I don't know. They don't look much like you.
Well, I can't help it, Julia. Since I put on a little weight, they don't have as many cute things in my size right now, but, well, I thought this blue silk was kind of nice.
Well, looks a little matronly.
Suzanne, you ought to go over to that specialty shop in Lenox Square. They have some great things that are very expensive looking, designer things for,
What?
Big and beautiful.
I beg your pardon?
Well, that's the name of the shop. Big and beautiful.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Jo, for the hot tip. I just don't think I need to patronize any store that would call itself by that thing, but since you think it's such a good idea, why don't we just go all the way and start shopping at Fat and Fabulous?
Suzanne, you don't have to be so sensitive. Mary Jo is just trying to be helpful.
I don't care what she's trying to be. I don't appreciate being told to go to the stout shop. I'll admit I have put on a few pounds here and there, but you all act like I should be ordering fabric over at Georgia Tent and Awning.
Now, remember when the professor explained the importance of foils amongst the four characters? Annie Potts, as Mary Jo Shively, in a single speech can support Suzanne, bust her chops a little, and make a grand statement about society in general. And she does it numerous times over the many seasons. And really, aren't we glad for that? Love, 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 Annie Potts.
The names of those stores are kind of dumb. And have you noticed that if it's in a real nice, expensive kind of mall, they'll have names like Women of Distinction or New Dimensions. But if it's for poor, overweight women, they'll just call it something like Fat Girls.
Why do you know so much about all this?
Because my neighbor gets a subscription to Big and Beautiful Women magazine.
Oh, well, now I guess we all know what I'll be getting for Christmas.
Oh, listen, you would love it. The short stories are great. They're always about, some guy who has dumped his skinny girlfriend for a great big woman. And it has lines like, he took Rosemary's soft, ample, voluptuous body into his arms, forever ridding himself of the memory of Celia's haggard, pinched face and boyish rear end.
The reunion is a 2-day event, with Friday night being drinks and dancing. It's at that gathering that Suzanne experiences body shaming and slams from her classmates, men as well as women. It's shallow, and yet, when you think of high school reunions, it's somewhat expected. And so a reunion, by its very nature, spurs reflection and comparison. Bloodworth-Thomason created a safe environment for Suzanne's growth, and one that we can all relate to. And all of that arises from this exchange with Julia.
Suzanne, it's just human nature. People love to see beautiful women get old or fat.
All my life, I've had to fight my weight. I'll admit, food has been my security blanket, but also I just gained weight more easily than some people. Like you. You've always had that little tiny waist and those skinny legs. But I can't be that. And people have always tried to make me be that.
Suzanne, you're not alone. to be willing to bet most of the people in this country are overweight.
The point is, it's different for women, especially beautiful women. Look at Elizabeth Taylor. I bet I've seen National Velvet probably 20 times. And if she never did anything else in her life, what a contribution that was. But all of a sudden, because she got fat, it was like she no longer had the right to live in this country. And that's how I feel right now. Boy, drugs, alcohol, cancer, whatever your problems, people are sympathetic unless you're fat. And then you're supposed to be ashamed. Everything's set up to tell you that. Magazine covers, clothes.
That was a pretty powerful statement delivered by a woman who spent her years succeeding on the pageant circuit. I don't know about you, but the reference to Elizabeth Taylor sparks a virtual slideshow in my head of People magazine and National Enquirer covers of celebrities who have put on weight. We call it clickbait today, but back then, were we buying the magazines for the articles? Or was it just salacious schadenfreude with a touch of, ha, you're just like the rest of us? Now, you know this wouldn't be a Designing Women episode if Julia didn't rise to the occasion and deliver a healthy dose of reality and candor, thereby providing Suzanne with the confidence and security to tackle Saturday's reunion banquet.
Looks are all you've ever had.
Wait a minute. What do you mean, if looks are all you've ever had? Suzanne, first of all, don't be a dummy. Your looks will never be in the past tense, okay? That face speaks for itself, and it's here to stay. And secondly, even if that weren't so, who cares?
What do you mean?
I mean that you and I are getting pretty far along in life now, and I have been able to figure out a couple of things.
Are you going to give me the key?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. In the end, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about you. People are going to forget you about 10 minutes after you die, anyway. The point is, you have to be exactly who and what you want to be. Most everybody's coasting along on phony public relations. People who say being beautiful or rich or thin makes them happy. People who are trying to make their marriages or their children seem better than they actually are. And for what? Appearances. Appearances don't count for diddly. When it's all said and done, all that counts is what was true and truly felt, and how we treated one another. And that's it.
Dixie Carter as Julia consistently projected pure strength alongside femininity. We remember the character for all of her high horse rants, but regular viewers know too well that she used those big shoulder pads and that big hair to shield, comfort, and support Suzanne, Mary Jo, Charlene, and Anthony. Remember, Dixie Carter uttered those words in 1989. Mark Zuckerberg was only 5, so his family's holiday photo wasn't posted on Facebook that year, or their ski trip, or the cute photos of the family dog snuggled up near the family fireplace. For a long time, insecure people have mounted tremendous amounts of creativity to, quote, put up appearances. Julia just wasn't having any of it then, and her words ring true today. Rest your soul, Dixie Carter. Back to the plot. Suzanne interacts with Anthony at the conclusion of the fast. Anthony introduces her to an Ethiopian boy who lost his family to famine and is now part of a global organization that raises money for famine relief. With humility, Suzanne notes the irony of a planet where so many can die of starvation while others are unable to manage with too much to eat. It's a little corny, but it puts it all out there. So with her head held high, Suzanne attends the reunion banquet, and as the program begins, we see Mary Jo and Julia slip into the back of the room.
And what was that last award for? Oh, yeah, the person who came the farthest.
How about an award for the person who went the farthest, nice? That'd be Ruth Dillingham. She's not here. She's still under the bleachers.
Hey, keep it down, fellas, okay? Now, we have another award to give out for the person who is the most changed.
How's it going? Where'd you all come from?
I see a lot of candidates out there for
What are
this
you
one.
doing here?
Any sex change operations in the room?
We came to check up on you.
I guess not. All right, well, the day of reckoning has come. Let's announce the winner. And the winner from the class of 1974, for the person who has changed the most, Suzanne Sugarbaker.
Well, this is quite a surprise. I guess maybe I deserve this award for the person most changed, but not for the reason you think. Last night I got my feelings hurt because I came to this reunion thinking I was beautiful, and what I found out was that I'm fat. At least you think I am. But that isn't the biggest change in me. The biggest change is that the old Suzanne wouldn't have shown up here tonight. She would have just gotten thin before the next reunion, and then she would have gotten even. But I'm a little older, and I hope a little wiser than that person used to be. A lot of things have happened to me. A lot of things have happened to all of us. Sandy Smothers was killed the night before we graduated. Diane Mitchell's got 2 sets of twins, and Galen Chadwick's working in the White House. We had a lot of dreams together. And there's no point in pretending. Some of mine came true and some didn't. I met a little boy from Africa tonight whose family died of starvation, and I realized I'd spent the whole day at home worrying about the fact that I have too much to eat. I'm not sure the old Suzanne would have appreciated the absurdity of that, but this one does. Some of you men wanted to know my bra size, but I'd rather talk about my heart because it's a little bigger than it used to be. The old Suzanne wouldn't have forgiven you for the things that you said, but this one will, because when I look around this room tonight, I don't see receding hairlines and the beginnings of pot bellies and crow's feet. I just see all the beautiful faces of old girlfriends and sweet young boys who used to stand on my front porch and try and kiss me goodnight. And you can remember me anywhere you like. But that's how I'll always remember you. And so I thank you for giving me this award for the person most changed, however you intended it.
Ladies and gentlemen, those were transformational minutes. Maybe this was like Nixon going to China. It was always said that only a Republican could normalize relations with China. And well, maybe the first brush of the topic of weight, comedic and serious, needed to come from a prima donna like Suzanne. Because we know this character has such a genuine heart, this speech, much like Julia's, demonstrates just how important words can be. It's incredibly well written. And it won't come as a surprise to you that Delta was nominated for an Emmy that season for leading actress in a comedy series. The competition was fierce, with Candice Bergen as Murphy Brown topping a field that included Blair Brown as Molly Dodd in The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd, Betty White as Rose Nyland in The Golden Girls, and Cheers' Kirstie Alley for her role as Rebecca Howe. Designing Women is available on DVD, and because someone took the time to upload most episodes to YouTube, an episode and a pep talk from Julia is always just a few clicks away. Like the many other tough topics it covered, Designing Women broke the silence on weight, professional and well-designed clothing for larger women, and the maturity or humility or whatever you want to call it that comes with accepting people for who they are. Decades later, we know that there's still plenty of judgment and shame out there. The weight loss industry, pardon the pun, is bigger than ever. Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig sign up a new celebrity each year to help us find the real us. And sadly, the eating disorder industry has to exist at all and is far more sophisticated than it was in 1989. And that's before we even start talking about the hunger and famine in the world today. Those are all other topics for another podcast. Today we focused on the talented writing and acting of Designing Women that took a real-life drama that was unfolding in a most unseemly way and stared it down. Delta Burke dreamed big when she wrote this line in her book that I'll close this installment with. She writes, "It seems to me that we in the entertainment business and society as a whole have a responsibility to show our daughters and sisters that a world of options is theirs for the picking." I'd like to thank Wendy Burns-Ardolino for helping me find the right approach for this topic. Read more about Designing Women, Living Single, and other shows featuring 4 strong women leads in her book, TV Female Foursomes and Their Fans. It's available through McFarland Publishing. Just go to McFarland Books, McFarlandBooks, books.com, and you will find her book. Barbara Walters' interview with Delta Burke and Gerald McCraney is found on YouTube. Again, this is helpful if you're trying to piece together the timeline of Delta Burke's interesting career. Delta's book, Delta Style, published in 1998 by St. Martin's Press, is really pretty interesting and includes fashion tips for women of all sizes. If I'm going to take beauty advice from anyone, I want it to be from someone who's worn a sash. Find this script and those from past shows at my website, CynthiaBemisAbrams.com, where you'll find photos of me more likely to be wearing shoulder pads than a tiara or sash. Follow the podcast on Twitter. Our handle is @TVHerstory. And yes, indeed, we have a Facebook page, and we keep it real there, too. At the host site Libsyn or iTunes, please drop a comment or idea for a future installment. If you've never revealed that you'd rather be Suzanne than Julia, share it privately in an email to advancedtvherstory@gmail.com. Just this once. Your secret's safe with me. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.